Hello. So this is my first video ever in YouTube, and so I just started a YouTube channel called E4Educate. So I'm going to come up with a series of videos on lecturing about how to write a research paper. As of now, uh, writing a research paper is a kind of burden for all the research scientists and the upcoming young scientists and for also the master and bachelor students these days. So there is no course available online, and also in many colleges, students are not well taught about how to conduct a research study and also how to write a research paper in terms of publishing it in very high reputed international journals. So here I have just taken an example of, let's suppose if you are coming up with a research study on data analysis. For example, if you think of studying a frequency of thunderstorms over a particular city, then how would you do the research and how would you end up writing a new research paper on your own? So I come up with some general guidelines here. So nothing like it's my personal idea. I just collected all the suggestions and comments that I used to get from all my mentors. Without any further delay, let's move on to the content of this video itself. So all we wonder is where to start in terms of writing the research paper and how to end it, right? So we might have heard from our professors and our seniors and mentors like the first way to start writing the research paper is to conduct a literature review. Literature review, if you for the students and for the research scientists, conducting a detailed research review is kind of a big burden. Reading at least on average 15 pages in the published research articles and conducting it for last 10 years of research study to perform a small study is definitely a burden. But believe me, literature review itself gives you the scope of the study, what kind of research study that you have to carry out and what methodology you need to apply, why you need to conduct a research, this particular research work in terms of calculating the frequency of thunderstorms for the city of interest. So all this answer comes from the literature review. So literature review, as I written here, builds a scope. So please conduct a detailed literature review at first before you identify the problem. So let's suppose you conducted a detailed literature review and you come up with a problem called estimation of frequency of thunderstorms using the latestly available high resolution satellite data sets. So now comes the data source. So you have to come up with what kind of data source that you use. Should you go for satellite data, or you are going for station observations, or you are going to model your own data. So based on this literature review that you have conducted so far, gives you an idea, gives you the path how to lead the research in terms of handling the data. So after conducting the literature review, move to the data sources. And also, when you're thinking of publishing your work in the academic research, you have to be 100% transparent in terms of what kind of data that you use in doing your research work. Let's suppose you come up with an idea of using the latest available satellite data sets for your research study, and then you move on to building a research methodology. Let's suppose you have conducted a detailed literature review. Let's suppose you read 10 literature articles, right? And then 10 literature article gives you an idea of 10 different research methodologies that have been conducted to understand the frequency of thunderstorms in various regions. So you have in your head 10 different methods to estimate the frequency of thunderstorm from different methods, from different data sources. And now you understand what are the caveats, what are the shortcomings of those methods. Because end of every research article that are published, they summarize what is the disadvantages, what are the assumptions that they have applied. So these give you a view how you can improve the methodology that they have used in your research paper. Make the research methodology quite simple. Don't make it complex unnecessarily. But the methodology should not be that simple in that way it loses novelty. And then after completing the research methodology, and then you conduct the research itself, you use any programming language in processing the data, in performing the analysis itself by using some formulations, equations, and stuffs, and you're ending up with some graphics. Right? The graphics could be any bar charts, line charts, or any spatial maps. It could have graphs, or it could have tables. Make sure all these graphics looks actually, forms top class in terms of visualization. The tick labels, uh, the presentation in the figures, they are very much visible to the readers, such that it gives a view like it's the credibility of the work, that which means it is not copied from somewhere. It is done completely by yourself. Then moving to the research and discussion. So after performing after building the graphics itself, then you put them one by one in explaining them and explaining the process, describing the results, and you discuss how it is differing in terms of the previous studies that are conducted, right? So you're comparing your results, and you're discussing what are the differences that you found in terms of the frequency of thunderstorm. Make the results and discussion quite in detail before the reviewers gonna ask you the question. So think like a reviewer point of view, think like a reader point of view, think like any future research scientist who are going to read this paper in next 5 years. Bring all those questions in your head and then discuss your results, right? Moving to the final content of your paper, which is abstract conclusion and summary. So conclusion and summary forms the most important part, because as a reader, the reader does not directly jump into results and conclusions because they are quite detailed in the research article. It might consume say 2 to 3 fours. So what the reader usually do is, an experienced research scientist, they read the abstract, which I'm going to explain later, and then they read the conclusion that you arrived at. So the conclusion should be necessarily be a very genuine and ideal. You cannot make any false information that it is all visible in your results what kind of results and differences that you have arrived at. So you cannot make any false conclusion here. So you have to be extremely genuine, and how your conclusions are coming out of assumptions. So you have to explore the uncertainty of your results here, and make sure when you're writing the conclusion and summary, you don't oversell your research work. Overselling the research work would create anger in the reviewers' minds, and they come up with a very strange questions to you. Finally, to many of you, it might be very confusing and surprising that why I put the abstract at the end, because it comes in the first in the research article, but it's always upside down. Once you do the literature review, which is very detailed work, and then you come up with the data sources and write down the research methodology, build your figures and graphics, and then describe your results, conclude your results. At this stage, you will have a very clear idea where this research study is fitting in the research area and what it is addressing in terms of research. So at this stage, you will have a very improved understanding of your own research. So when you write this at the end, you commit no mistake. And some guidelines around the abstract is, make it very concise. Don't make it so lengthy such that it is very boring, right? So make it very concise and interesting. And finally, come with the title. Again, this could be surprising why I'm writing the title at the end. So people usually begin building the research paper first coming up with the title itself. No. When you do the results and discussion section, you might be changing your research methodology slightly. You might be getting new ideas about how to explore this work. So when you finish writing your conclusions and summary, and when you finish writing your abstract, you will have a very clear idea about what a title could exactly match your research work. Keep in mind that the title is something that welcomes the reader. So it should be very catchy, and it should have the keywords that usually people do do a Google search. So it should be very ideal as well. With this, I end this video in terms of the guidelines, whereas in the future videos, I will go over each individual section in detail and help you understand how to overcome the burden of writing the research paper. So thank you so much. So if you like, comment and subscribe and share the video, it will be very helpful for the page. Thank you.